Uh, yeah. Okay. Got it. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to the Week 3 edition of the Sunday Sideline Report here on the Sports Insanity Network. Mike, the old ops guy, are with you. Old ops guy, good morning. Happy Week 3.
Happy Week 3 with a heavy heart.
We will dive into why Mark has a heavy heart in a few minutes. But we'll start with something we were talking about off camera, and that is the NFL has announced who's going to perform the halftime show for the Super Bowl in Vegas. And it will be Usher.
And I'll usher my way to the kitchen.
Yeah, there you go.
No offense to Usher. It's just a halftime show I'm not going to look forward to.
Yeah. Listen, we were talking about this off camera. I'm just off air. It'll never happen. I'm ready for another hard rock-esque act. It'll never happen. But then I said, the alternative for me would be Weird Al. That's the dream.
I'm a big Weird Al fan. I don't think it would get past NFL fans, but I would be so down for that.
But the Super Bowl halftime show isn't about the football fan. It's about the casual individual who watch it. If you walk around, people are going to know who Usher is, but someone who's not going to watch the game might say, "Oh, I enjoy Usher, so I'll tune in for the halftime show."
There you go.
I mean, like a couple of years ago, the Weeknd performed. I still don't know who the Weeknd is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still unsure if there's a guy named The Week who has his own songs as well, but. Usher gets the halftime show in Vegas. Weird Al snubbed again, as was Fake Elvis. Fake Elvis totally robbed, but we'll digress on that. But now on to why Mark has a heavy heart this morning. Cowboys cornerback Trayvon Diggs injured his knee in practice on Thursday.
Yep.
And an MRI revealed he has torn his ACL. He is out for the year. Before we dive into bigger picture stuff, Mark, just reaction to this.
It was best said by Ben DiNucci is that he couldn't understand, Ben DiNucci being ex-Dallas Cowboy third-string backup, said he didn't understand why they play one-on-ones in practice and put players like Diggs or Gilmore in that type of situation. And he said he was instructed to treat it as a game day situation, and he said it's going to be the cost of the player, and here it is. Yes, I understand you can't treat every situation with air pumps and cushions and tires, whatever, to withstand an injury, and you got to keep it as real as possible. But let's try not to lose a player of the caliber that Trayvon Diggs is, and it's going to be felt.
I mean, we could have this conversation go back to training camp when the Dolphins lost Jalen Ramsey. Similar situation. There's a good news to this. There's a bad news to this. The bad news is you lose Trayvon Diggs for the year. Now, luckily for Diggs, he did sign his 5-year, $97 million contract extension during the offseason. The other good news, and this is for the Cowboys in general, they did get Stephon Gilmore in the offseason. And this is not the reason why you go get Stephon Gilmore, but it's a reason why having Stephon Gilmore is so important. Because no one wants to see a guy like Trayvon Diggs go down. But now you still have a legitimate number one corner. And let's be real honest here. The way the Cowboy pass rushes looked the first 2 weeks of the year, I mean, it's pretty good. It should be good again today playing the Cardinals, but that's a whole nother conversation. But Mark, when we look at the landscape of the NFC, and I guess this is a two-part question. The first part being what I said about Gilmore, but the second part being when we look at the NFC, there's three teams at the top. It's Philly, it's Dallas, it's San Francisco. Does the Trayvon Diggs injury? I don't want to say does it knock the Cowboys down to maybe that second tier because I don't want to put them there, but it has to put a little bit of distance between the top two and Dallas.
So, the moment that happened, everybody's heart sank. And, injuries happen. We have to deal with it and move on. Yes, he signed for the next 5 years. We'll go on from there. Deron Bland will take over at the number 2. And Jordan Lewis will move into the slot corner. This is not the best replacement. It's not the worst replacement. Deron Bland can play. He's mostly been on nickel placement and slot coverage. This is going to be his first time since the beginning of last year that he'll be one-on-one coverage on the side. So now Stephon Gilmore is your number 1, and there's nothing wrong with that. The guy is a former defensive player of the year for a reason, and he's also shown his play in the beginning of this year. So Deron Bland is going to have to kind of replicate what Trayvon was giving, and that's taking away the pass. I expect Deron Bland to get help probably over top from Malik Hooker, probably Donovan Wilson, who will be playing today, which is a big help for that with the loss of Trayvon, who will be helping out Deron Bland in the over coverage. But all in all, where does this move Dallas? Yes, I agree. You have to take everything into account. And yeah, this is going to move the Dallas team down a little bit, a notch, a full notch. Today is not a real test. No offense to the Arizona Cardinal fans who could be watching right now. Is not a real test. The first real test for Dallas really will come when they play the Eagles. So we'll see. They have time to figure out who's going to be in that corner too. Right now it'll be Deron Bland, but if Bland doesn't work out, Jordan Lewis will be the next one with opportunity.
And again, they could always go to the trade deadline and free agent market to see. But here's just the upcoming schedule for the Cowboys. They get the Cardinals this week. They play New England next week. Then the next 2 weeks, I think, is where you're going to start seeing what happens with the Trayvon Diggs thing. At San Francisco and at the Chargers. Those 2 games are going to tell you if they are going to need to go get a corner or not. Then they play the Rams, and then they go to Philly. So 3 of those games, unless the Rams get Cooper Kupp back, and that's a whole nother conversation, we'll have to see how things go for the Dallas Cowboys in that situation. But we mentioned Philly, and we mentioned San Francisco. Both those 2 teams, like Dallas, are undefeated. One of those 2 teams has already remained undefeated. 49ers on Thursday night walloped the Giants by a score of 30-12. Brock was pretty good, 25 of 37, 310 yards, 2 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey, 85 rushing yards and a touchdown, but over 100 total scrimmage yards. Debo 6 for $129 and a touchdown. For the Giants, Mark Sky, Daniel Jones 22 of 32 for $137 and a pick. The Giant touchdown was scored by Matt Breida. Of course, there was no Saquon Barkley in this game, although according to the Amazon Prime broadcast, he said there's a chance he could play next Monday night against Seattle.
Saquon Barkley is the New York Giants. And I'll say it again. The Giants made a mistake who they made the contract offer to. And now Saquon is now injured and down, now making his trade, what they could get back is in question because nobody knows his health. He could be another Carlos Correa, unfortunately, just to give an idea. That ankle has taken a lot of damage over the last 4 years. So the question is how he bounces back from this. The Giants are going to be at the bottom of the NFC East. There is no way this team can function. However, I hope the NFL goes back and really reviews this game because the refs friggin' sucked. Okay, not saying that it would really have changed much of the outcome, but there was a few calls, especially the one call on Leonard Williams for roughing the passer. His momentum was guiding him. He didn't hit his helmet. What did you want the guy to do? Flop and hit him in the legs and still get the penalty? Come on. There was a lot of things in that game, but not that it would have changed the final score outcome.
Yeah, the officials weren't fun. I do want I do want to dive more into roughing the passer, and we could do it after we kind of break this down. But to your first point on the Giants and where they're going to be, like, here's the upcoming schedule. Like, they played San Fran. Next week they get Seattle. By the way, most times you would love a West Coast team coming east. Too bad it's not a 1:00 game. It's the Monday night game. But then they go to the Dolphins, to the Bills. Then they go Commanders, Jets, Raiders, Cowboys, Commanders, Patriots before their Week 13 bye. Now, obviously, there's a lot to be unpacked before you get to the bye week because there is the trade deadline. And you brought up Saquon. And I think there's a distinct possibility to where if they're not in the situation where they're competing for a wild card spot or whatever, that they could have to trade him because it may help with what you're doing in the long run. Because I agree with what your point is. You were better off signing him than Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones had one decent year and he still has to go out and prove himself. And through the first 3 games, he hasn't been great. I don't even know if you can use the term good, but this offense functions differently because with Saquon in there, you have to worry about Saquon, and not all the pressure goes to Daniel Jones. Now, I will give Daniel Jones this pass. That Niners defense is a behemoth. When you're talking Nick Bosa, Armstead, Fred Warner. But the Giants, they're running this very similarly to how they ran things last year, which is they don't have a ton of weapons on the outside, and they're so heavily reliant on the run game. Well, 2 things on what happened Thursday, and then we'll dive into San Fran. The first part was Daniel Jones didn't run at all. Like, they did not use designed runs for Daniel Jones, which I think Fred Warner even said post-game he was shocked about. The second part, you go out and you get a Darren Waller. There is no reason that Darren Waller shouldn't have a target before the end of the first half. Whether you're in the red zone or not, that's your guy. you have to get him involved earlier. Brian Abel and Mike Kafka. That's how this is going to have to work. But all in all, and let's be real honest, through 3 games, the New York Giants have showed up for 2 halves because they were the second half against Arizona and the first half of this game, they were competitive. And then stuff hit the fan.
Mm-hmm. Call it what you may. Call it bad luck, call it being cursed as a New York Giants organization, call it whatever you want to call it. The Giants still have won a Super Bowl in this millennium and the Cowboys have not, if you want to be a Giants fan and be that way about it. But the game really lost it right after the start of the fourth quarter, when Moody hit that field goal and San Francisco had all that momentum. Right going into that quarter, that was it. And then Purdy slowly picked apart that Giant defense, which is not surprising, because when the Arizona Cardinals can pick apart your defense, that says nothing about it. That being said, this was a complete mismatch. There was no competitive action coming from the Giants, really, that you can talk about. Could the tank be on? I mean, it's a possibility. Giants are going to need a quarterback. However, if anyone believes that the Arizona Cardinals didn't tank that game to the New York Giants, you got to be out of your mind.
That's a fair point. Flip side to San Francisco, we mentioned before, defense is really good. The offense, I'm going to make a statement, and it's going to upset Mark, and it's going to upset the entire city of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The San Francisco 49ers, with the Nick Bosa signing, the Niners are the most complete team in football.
And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's a very fair point. And if Trayvon Diggs was still on the field, then you would get more of an argument out of me. However, yes, with the loss of Trayvon Diggs, San Francisco right now, is showing growth. Dallas is going to reclaim the number 1 defense, especially after this game today. But that's going to be a constant battle between Dallas, San Francisco, and I'm going to say it, the other team in New York. The Jets have a very scary defense. I mean, it's a good defense. So, let's not count them out right away. Let's see what happens with them as well. But that being said.
And the other part for me is, and I'm ready to lift the gate. A lot of people talked about Brock Purdy, and he came in last year. Team's really good. All he has to do is manage the game. He gets hurt, they lose in the NFC title game. Then it became, who starts this year after he has the elbow surgery? Is it Trey Lance? It's Sam Darnold. Brock Purdy goes, no, guys, I'm still good at this. And you can give me George Kittle, you can give me Devo, you can give me McCaffrey. Like, Brock Purdy has become the guy for the 49ers.
And he's gotten more chance than anybody else, in that in this situation. I mean, you brought up Trey Lance. The Niners traded all the way up to get him.
Yep.
And he only had a 4-game interview. Look, Ryan Leaf had more than a 4-game interview before his career was over. So, I don't think Trey Lance got a fair shot. That being said, he's now in Dallas. He's going to be the number 2 guy, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas can pick up a lineman or something if Cooper Rush gets moved. It'll all depend on how much of the playbook and how comfortable McCarthy and Jones are. Yes, both Joneses are
Keeping up
with
the
Trey
Joneses.
Lance as the backup. So, there are speculations, but we'll see how gutsy Dallas wants to be.
Yeah, just one quick note. It was announced on Friday Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch both get their contracts extended by the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a surprise.
I mean, you put together one of the best teams in football. Yeah. For the Niners, next week they'll play Mark's Cardinals. Then they set up for a showdown with the Cowboys on a Sunday night.
It's going to be a hell of a game.
All right. So that's the housekeeping stuff. Now we go into the biggest mess in the world. And no, it's not even about Aaron Rodgers and his Achilles now. We got to talk. Actually, no, we were going to talk officiating on the fly because you brought up the roughing the passer on Leonard Williams in the game. And I want to go back to the Cowboy Jet game last week because there was the one on John Franklin Myers of the Jets.
A horrible call.
It was horrendous. Here's the thing that really pisses me off. Robert Saleh said during one of his press conferences during the week, yeah, the league told him it was a bad call. Well, then there's got to be something done. Because I think the rule mark of roughing the passer itself, either A, it needs to be rewritten, or B, we're getting to the point now where we have to put flags on the quarterbacks because you can't lay a finger on them without these guys being so quick to throw the flag. Now, there is a third option here, but the NFL will never go for it. And that would make roughing the passer reviewable.
And that's what needs to be done. I know we're talking about adding more time to the game and more time away from the ball and momentum changing. But that one call is almost the exact same call that happened in the Giants-San Francisco game.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same thing. Momentum going in. He wasn't deliberately going at Dak's legs. He wasn't deliberately going at what do you call it? At Brock Purdy's waist. It was his momentum that guided him. There was no ill damage or late hit to the head, whatever you want to do, but less of being putting flags on the quarterback and then blowing the whistle the moment one falls off. What are we doing here? So yes, the third option is what needs to be done.
I would combine 1 and 3 because I do think the rule has to be rewritten to a degree. Because, listen, I think the fans understand the helmet to helmet, the driving to the ground, the late hit part. The parts that the fans don't understand, the body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it becomes, because you're a quarterback, you get this special treat. And it's changed the way the game not only is played, but it also changes the way we look at things. You see a quarterback go down now, you're going to go, oh, well, where's the flag? Waiting on it. We don't know what's clean and what's not.
Right.
So,
and we don't sometimes know until 3 minutes after the play is over, and then we're the ones reviewing and like, are you kidding me?
And listen, this isn't on the networks because everyone has them. But when they have their rules analyst guy tell me, oh, it's bad call. Well, then let's do something about bad calls.
Right.
Let's be fair. And listen, we could criticize coaches. We could criticize players. The refs are open to criticisms as well. But I think the bigger thing for me is just we've seen guys get hit all the time, and it's supposed to be football. When it comes to roughing the passer, I'm not there. The rules have changed so dramatically from I'm going to go from the early 2000s because that's the earliest I can remember. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady would take hits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you poke a guy and he goes down, there's a flag.
Yeah.
So, oh, so that's roughing the passer stuff that we want to go on to. But we'll move on. Justin Fields made some interesting comments this week. When asked about his struggles and robotic play, Justin Fields basically said, I got to do better, but so do my coaches. And so he basically put the blame on his coaches. He did walk those back. But Mark, I don't think this is a good look for Justin Fields.
For once, a guy's being honest, and that's what we want. We want to know what we don't want to hear the Gipper. I'm taking it all on me. We want to hear honesty. Finally, we get it, and now it's, oh, now this looks bad on Justin Fields. Mike and I rarely disagree on stuff, so this is actually fun for it being live. There's times to keep your mouth shut. Don't get me wrong. And for coming from someone who put his foot in his mouth way more than it ever needed to be, it's me. There's times where you keep your mouth shut. However, you're getting grilled. And I'm sure if we go back and look on Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, one time or another throughout their career, they have blamed somebody else or another type of position, whatever, for the loss. Justin Fields was being honest that, it's not just on me, it's on the coaches. My coaching's not getting me what I need. You're going toe to toe with a franchise possibility quarterback. If you don't give the guy weapons, then what's the point of being considered a 10-year player? There is no way Chicago is going to go anywhere with that offense. The defense is just as bad as the offense. So, I'm not sure what to make of it.
They traded the number 1 overall pick in a trade that got him DJ Moore. They got him an offensive lineman, I believe at 9 was their draft pick. They went out last year and got don't go chasing Claypools. They did lose David Montgomery, but David Montgomery, no offense to David Montgomery, he's always hurt.
Yeah, and that being said, he's now out for Detroit.
Yeah, so you still have a guy like Khalil Herbert. My thing has been on Fields was when he ended last year, he ended on such a high.
Mm-hmm.
And you thought, okay, this is going to carry over into this year. And the Bears, maybe they're not a playoff team, but maybe they're a team that wins 6 or 7 games. And maybe they can hang in the race for a little bit longer. Well, in week 1, they get beat by Jordan Love, who had the same success Aaron Rodgers had against them. And then last week they lose to a Bucs team that, to be honest, I didn't think was this good. But to sit there and just listen, I get it. You're 0-2, you're frustrated. But don't put the blame all on the coaches. You have to share some of the blame because they're not out there telling you in Madden, hey, throw it to this guy. This is the guy you got it. You have to be able to see the field and just let it go.
And yes, there are areas where Justin Fields does need to improve. Don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with DJ Moore at your 1 and Claypool there, but still, it's not a solid 1 and 2. You need another name, and that's why I was very surprised they made the move for DJ Moore, but they let Allen Robinson go. I would have kept Robinson, gotten more, and then you could have talked about an offense with, yes, a running back.
I mean,
No name.
Robinson was a couple of years ago at this point now, too.
Right. And Robinson would have probably seen what was going on, be willing to take a step down a little bit if he wasn't having, but to see what could have been. So, I mean, that's, yes, turning back the good old wheel of time, which we can't do.
I mean, hey, bringing a Juju, I mean, that could have helped you.
Yep.
You listen, when you run a team, you know your holes and your weaknesses. The Bears had the number 1 overall pick, which meant they could have drafted a Bryce Young, they could have drafted Stroud, or they could have traded the pick. They decided with option C, they traded the pick. In that trade, they figured DJ Moore's good. He's fine. We're going to get multiple picks, and we'll try to revamp it this way. They thought their lock was Justin Fields was going to continue to progress. Right now, it's not looking that way. Now, it's early in the season, and there's a lot of time for this to change. But it's just not a good look, in my opinion, for him to just say, Coach has got to do better, too. Everyone in Chicago has to do better. You know why? Because Chicago has not been relevant since Rex Grossman took them to the Super Bowl.
I was about to say, they haven't been relevant since a DeLorean did 88 miles an hour. I mean, that was the last time, and we can't turn back time. So let's stop living in the past like I do. So let's, move forward.
What a Cher reference, turn back time. I mean, we could have also said they haven't been relevant since Michael Jordan. They haven't been relevant since the last Hawks Cup 8 years ago. But, we'll digress on the Bears. All right, so on to some of the games today, Mark. We were talking about this one before we went live, too. We think the biggest one of the day features 2 0-2 teams with the Chargers and the Vikings.
Yes, Mike's Kirk Cousins' favorite fanboy right there. We all know that. And
my boy Kirk.
Yeah, God. The other thing we disagree about, this game means a lot more than a lot of other games that are being played today. One team is going home 0-3. There will not be a tie in this game. You go 0-3, your chances of making the playoffs are pretty much nil. And for franchises that have offenses like these two teams have, now mind you, yes, the Chargers have lost Austin Eckler for the last 2 weeks, and that's a big loss, who is basically somebody who literally performs to numbers like Christian McCaffrey, and it's hard to replace a guy like that. And Joshua Kelly is doing the best he can. But it was the moment Eckler was out of the game, it was like the tires were let out, and Miami came back and took that game, and then losing last week. And then you have this offense of Minnesota that that lets Dalvin Cook go, which whatever, they did what they did. Then gets the treatment of Alexander Madison, which is uncalled for. But you have this offense of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. And Kirk Cousins is not the guy, and I'll always stand by that. Whoever wins this game today, yes, gets a 1 in the win column, but at what cost?
So part of me questions what the Vikings did this offseason when they cut Dalvin Cook. Because the Vikings had won 11, 12 games, whatever it was last year. A lot of those were one-score games. We knew that never repeats itself the following year. They go out and now they've traded for Cam Akers. I'm intrigued by the Cam Akers deal for the Vikings. But you're right. They have an Addison, they have a Jefferson, a Hawkinson. So whether Kirk Cousins is the guy or not, there remains to be seen because he is a free agent after the year. I'm going to go to the other side. You mentioned Eckler being out. And I agree with you, it's a huge loss. The pressure is on Justin Herbert because I want to say people want to anoint Justin Herbert as the next guy, or he's the guy who's going to challenge Mahomes and Allen and Burrow as the next best quarterback in the league. Well, as good as Justin Herbert is, and he's really good, really talented, I need him to have a game today where he shows how talented and good he really is. Because you've lost 2 games to 2 teams you may be competing with for a wild card spot. When you lose to the Dolphins and you lose to the Tennessee Titans, you need to find a way to win. Because we talk about how talented the Chargers are. His new contract kicks in next year, Herbert, which means this roster isn't going to be as talented as it is now. So, Justin Herbert, Brandon Staley, go out there, beat the Vikings, and say, you know what? We should be considered amongst the elite in the AFC. Brandon Staley, when you're asked a question about the Jacksonville game from January, don't sit there and give me the nonsense of these guys are talented. We know they're talented, but it's a valid question from the reporter that's not inside their head. So get over yourself, bro. All right. So that's Chargers. Vikings. Loser goes to 0-3. In the most epic game you could imagine, because the 2 games last year were amazing. So amazing that the second one's final score was 10-3, and it ended on a punt return. You had the Patriots visiting the Jets, looking for their 15th straight win over the Jets.
What a marker to be able to say you can do is win that many games over one team. This is going to be a relief game for Zach Wilson, as the weather in New York is not pretty, and it ain't getting any nicer as the day moves on. It's going to be rainy and heavy. This is going to be a running game. Yeah, you're going to have to pass a little bit, but it's going to be a ground game, and this is why the Jets did what they did in getting Dalvin Cook to help relieve a little bit of the stress off Breece Hall. It's a good change of pace. Not to say that that's where Dalvin Cook has ended up, as a change of pace guy, but let's call it what it is. Breece Hall was the number 1. He wasn't saying that it wasn't going to be a change of pace guy in, and he's not saying he's not welcome to Dalvin Cook, but Dalvin Cook has to understand he's not the number 1, but a 1-2 punch against this New England defense that's not what it used to be is what's going to get it done for the Jets, and it's going to take a lot of stress off Zach Wilson, and I think that's what Wilson needs, is a day where it's not going to be questioned about all his decisions.
Today has to be a day, if you're the Jets, why you have Breece Hall, why you signed Dalvin Cook, and you have to get Garrett Wilson involved. If you get your playmakers involved, the hoodie on the other side, he doesn't have those playmakers. But it's on Nathaniel Hackett to get these guys involved. Breece Hall was right when he said, I need to get more than 4 touches in a game, especially when let's be real honest. Mark's not a Jet fan. I'm not a Jet fan. You need to not have Zach Wilson lose games. He
Right.
has to play the role of, I hate saying it, he has to be a game manager. That is who he has to be. So when they played Dallas last week, I felt Nathaniel Hackett's play calling was dreadful in the sense of he wanted Zach Wilson to be Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And guess what? The last time I checked, Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are two totally different people.
Two different universes.
You're right.
Yeah.
So Nathaniel Hackett's play calling's got to get better to help Zach Wilson. And the other side, listen, New England just they don't have the weaponry on the outside. They don't. I don't like Juju. Kendrick Bourne's okay. They have two good tight ends with Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki. I don't love them on the outside. They want to pound the ball with Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke. The other part, and maybe I'm just too critical of the guy, I don't love Mac Jones.
Yeah, I look, Mac Jones, has talent or he wouldn't be in the NFL. But I've been very critical of him since day one. In the business I'm in, any of his cards, help the business. So I was all for it then. But I've been very critical of Mac Jones starting, very critical of the fact that they got rid of Bailey Zappi and not giving him a chance. It shows that Belichick is still trying to be a loyal coach when sometimes you have to put what's best on the field, and we could be seeing the decline of one of the greatest coaches to step on a field.
Yeah, and they have some injuries on defense you got to worry about, but Bill will have his team competitive. That is one thing he'll have. And I've wondered this probably for the last year and a half now. Arguments say he breaks I think we're just waiting for him to break the wins record and then he retires. Like he's got nothing left to prove. He just wants the record and then he steps away.
And it'll be a nice salute around the league in his final year and beyond well deserved. Beyond well deserved. So,
battle in the NFC. We got the Saints heading to Lambeau to play the Packers. A Packer team that should be 2-0.
Absolutely should be 2-0. Without question. I know he has an ear in, and as he's already flipped me the finger on multiple different pictures in the last 45 minutes. Shout out to the good patch, man. The Packers became their worst enemy last week and letting the Atlanta Falcons win that game. The defense was the letdown. Jordan Love is trying to be, let's not say trying, is looking like Aaron Rodgers out there having flawless games. His passes are on target. He's getting 3 touchdowns a game. So, this is what we've come to expect of Packers quarterbacks. However, we're going into the one team that made the Packers look like Swiss cheese 2 years ago, but that also had crab legs on that team also at that time, and that was the Saints. And if you look back over their progression over history, it's not been more or less who has more wins. It's always been a good battle, but the Saints have owned the Packers, and I'm expecting something similar today, especially after watching the collapse of that defense last week. I think Atlanta is coming into their own. Bijan Robinson has had a great game, and you got Desmond Ridder finally connecting with Drake London. So Kyle Pitts is performing well. So Atlanta, I don't know how I got on the topic of Atlanta. Jesus. The Packers dealing with last week have to come out and, not allow Derek Carr to pick them apart with Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. That's what we need. Wow.
Here's the big benefit for the Saints. They're going to Lambeau in September as opposed to December, January. So the weather won't play a massive factor. I'll say this. Jordan Love's looked good through 2 weeks. I give Matt LaFleur a lot of credit. The one thing to really watch is Aaron Jones. We don't know if he's playing yet. I don't believe the inactives have come out.
No, not that I've seen as of yet.
Yeah, so we're waiting on that. But that's a big loss for the Packers if he's not playing. The flip side, listen, Derek Carr hasn't been great through 2 games, but guess what? The Saints are 2-0.
And that's what matters.
That's what matters. And I think when we talked about the powerhouse of the NFC earlier with San Francisco, Philly, and Dallas, I think the beginning of that second tier is the New Orleans Saints.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. Because they have the quarterback in Derek Carr. They're going to get Alvin Kamara back next week. And then that defense is just really, really good. And it's always really, really good. And they're the team I think a lot of people in the NFC or in football are just, you're sleeping on them a little bit because they haven't done anything sexy yet. Just wait. The Saints could be there in Mardi Gras. All right, so those are 2 NFC playoff hopefuls. All right, I'm going to lump 4 AFC playoff hopefuls in at once because we got 2 AFC South versus AFC North games. We got the Titans and the Browns, and we got the Colts and the Ravens. So really, new Colts versus old Colts, if you want to go that route. But Mark, no Nick Chubb for the Browns, but Kareem Hunt is back.
Talk about a game of round robin with running backs in Cleveland. You had the 2 of them. You let one go. One gets injured. One comes back. It's like a game of dodgeball right now for that team. Unfortunately, Nick Chubb, who was going to have a pretty decent season, lost for the year, going to take a step back. But now you have a guy in Kareem Hunt who's now coming back in, and he doesn't really need to get acclimated to the playbook because he knows it. So, I mean, that's an advantage. And could he be game ready, today? Possible. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I like Kareem Hunt. Yeah, I think he got a rough deal out of KC. So we'll see. As for Cleveland going anywhere, you can't really say anything right now. We're only at the second game of the year, but all arrows point to no.
And Cleveland needs Deshaun Watson to be much, much better if they're going to go anywhere. Flip side to the Titans, I know they beat the Chargers. I'm not there on the Titans. I haven't been there on the Titans. Don't love Tannehill. DeAndre Hopkins,
you'll always remember them, Mike.
We will always remember the Titans forever. DeAndre Hopkins will play, but I don't know. I maybe it's because the Titans don't do things like the Saints, and they're not sexy. They're just really good. I don't know. I'm just not there. As for Colts Ravens, my main man, Uncle Rico Gardner Minshew gets the start. Anthony Richardson's out with a concussion. But the Ravens also have a lot of injuries.
That's the right move right there.
Yeah.
Is not to let the future of your organization go back out there, no offense, Miami, and risk a second one and possibilities of life-threatening injury to him as well. So this is the right move. It also does give them the opportunity to showcase Gardner Minshew and possibilities of a trade.
I hope the Jets are watching Gardner Minshew today.
Wow, that's a possibility. So, okay.
All right. So in an AFC, NFC battle, you got the Bills going to D.C. to take on the Commanders, the undefeated Washington Commanders.
Who would ever predicted that? Not me.
I don't even think Ron Rivera predicted it.
He's definitely been a happy guy. However, we do have two SIM members who will be at that game today. One of them who's neutral. The other one, you're going to be able to pick him out in the crowd because there's going to be a sea of white or a sea of red with one blue dot in the middle. And that's going to be our friend Nate Moser.
From what I've read, there's supposed to be a lot of Bills fans at this game.
Well, hopefully he's in that one section.
And the Commanders win, and he'll be disappointed.
That's when you see the blue dot cry. We love you, Nate. Don't worry. This is a game where you're going to really see the Commanders come apart. This to me is basically like the Jets-Dallas game last week. This is a no question game. I think the Bills are in for a prime time, even with the weather being a problem, prime time spanking of a team.
Yeah, the Commanders' first two games, one was the Cardinals, barely beat them, and they hung on to beat Denver last week on a crazy end of the game. They're playing with fire, and the Bills are just more talented, and they're just better. The one thing from the Commanders that you like to see is Sam Howell's play pretty well.
Yes, I mean that's paid off. That pick is definitely paid off, and he's played very well.
Yeah, so those are just the. I don't think if you're a Commanders fan, you expected the playoffs this year. You just wanted to see what Sam Howell gives you. Through two games, it's been pretty good. So, all right. Battle of AFC playoff hopefuls. The winless Broncos go to the undefeated Dolphins. No Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins out with a concussion. I want to say this, though. I don't know who's doing the broadcast, but I want to know how many times they bring up the point of Sean Payton could have been the Dolphins coach because of what happened with Tom Brady last year. That's all I'm asking for, is how many times are we going to hear that today? But
I'd say at least once.
Minimum once. But, Mark, the big thing for me, Russell Wilson's played okay through two games, but he's been sacked 9 times.
And for a guy with his age, that's not going to bode well as you get into a 17-game season, and by week 11, your quarterback can barely walk. Russell Wilson has had a nice week last week, finding Brendan Mims for a nice long score. It was a nice way to see the old Russell Wilson come into play. However, that being said, Russell Wilson is not the guy that was traded for. I don't know what happened to that guy over the span of an offseason, but he is a shell of himself. He is out of date. His expiration has come, and it's time to, not that you really can because of what you're into him for the next few years, but you got to look for the future. And Russell Wilson was, I understand with the wide receivers he had with Sutton and Judy, but they have been injured. He has been injured. There's no time for him to get the ball. There's no running game. This was a mistake by Denver. I said it then, and I'll say it now. Dolphins win this game outright. And that's not because you're a Dolphin fan and I'm trying to please you.
Well, I think they win outright too. I'll say this. I'm excited for two things in this. One, Vic Fangio revenge game, former Bronco coach, now DC of the Dolphins. But if we're looking for an individual matchup, the Patrick Surtain versus Tyreek Hill matchup on the other side, I'm intrigued by how Mike McDaniel's going to get Tyreek Hill the ball in different ways without Jalen Waddle. So that is something that really intrigues me. Other side, whether it's Sutton or Judy, someone's going up against Xavier Howard, who has looked pretty good through 2 weeks as well. So there's that as well. So it should be an interesting game. Sunday night, we got a great one where Chris Collinsworth's going to tell you, here's a guy.
Oh God,
We got the Steelers and the Raiders, Mark.
Gonna be a fun game. Yeah, Las Vegas, trying to redefine itself a little bit, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who actually thought putting in a fence was going to be the right quarterback of the future. No. Sorry, I will never be a Kenny Pickett fan. I can't get behind the guy as a quarterback. That being
You won't
said,
build a fence for
him. That's what they need to do. He can move, he can throw on the run. It's not the type of football that Pittsburgh's used to anymore. They tried it with the slash once. It didn't work. They went to a guy who could deal in the pocket and get the ball over in Ben Roethlisberger. That's the type of football that's played in Pittsburgh. So, no, I do not believe Kenny Pickett's the answer. I do foresee the Raiders and Josh Jacobs and Hunter Renfrow having a much better week. I see Michael Mayer finally showing the reason why he was drafted as high as he was, and he'll get on the board this week. I think this is going to be a Raiders game that is going to be a fun, exciting game, but the Raiders will win this game, and it'll come down to a touchdown at least.
Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think has been sacked yet this year.
That I do not
I think that was the stat I read. Other side of the ball, you got TJ Watt. I don't know if there's a guy on the Raider offensive line that can contain TJ Watt.
I don't know if there's a guy in the NFL.
That's true. I'll say this. I'm with you on Pickett. I need to see way more than what I've seen. But they have the talent with George Pickens, Najee Harris, Freiermuth. They've got players. Defense is pretty good. I said on Wishbone before the season, I felt this was the Steelers are talented. I just thought the AFC had caught up to them. That don't mean I trust the Raiders at all. I would take Pittsburgh here. I just think Pittsburgh. It's not that I like Pittsburgh more. It's that I just don't trust the Raiders. Jimmy G, okay. Jacobs is good. But I need to trust Josh McDaniels, and that's just something I can't do.
It'll be a good game, as a football fan, it'll be a good game. But when the clock runs out, the Raiders will win this game. As I said, a touchdown, but I think the player of this game will be Josh Jacobs.
That's fair. And then we got a Monday night doubleheader tomorrow. Rams Bengals. We still do not know Joe Burrow's status. And we got the Eagles and the Bucks. So someone's going to 2-1 in that one as well.
Eagles Buccaneers have been cooking a little bit with their new baker in the oven, in the kitchen working, but I can't see the Eagles losing this game, and that hurts me enough to say. And then Cincinnati Rams, we have to wait until we hear about who's going to be starting for Cincinnati. Really much to give an answer, but let's say it's a battle of the ages here. I still like Cincinnati with the secondary on LA looking weaker than it should.
Yeah. Also, the Rams haven't played as poorly yet. I mean, they played pretty well through 2 games. Whooped Seattle, and we're competitive with the Niners. So give the Rams credit for that. Since they need Joe Burrow. Flip side, Philly's defense needs a game. They were good against. They were pretty good at forcing turnovers against Minnesota, but they let Minnesota into that game. And against New England, they were up 20-0, but they let New England back in. They need a game where they just shut everything down. You know what Jalen Hurts and company are going to do? The Eagle defense needs to win them that game against Tampa. So, and whether Burrow plays or not, the Bengals at home, I can't see them at 0-3.
I can't see them at 0-3 either, but if Joe Burrow does not play, that's where they're going to be. They do not win this game without him. I mean, I know that's a rough fact to put it all on one guy, but he wants to be that guy, then you got to do that guy things.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be blunt like that, but that's what it's going to be.
But I'll say this also, flip side, it's the Rams again. Puka Nacua. Great game. And he's been great through 2 weeks for the Rams. So there's that as well. All right. Mark, 2 quick rapid fires, and then we'll get into the fantasy player of the day. Which undefeated team is most likely to lose? And which 0-2 team needs to win the most?
Well, I think we both covered the answer on which 0-2 team needs the most, and we're both agreeing that it's going to be that game against the Vikings and the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
The team that's going to lose that same moniker, that chew and goose egg, is going to be Washington. I do not think they can stand toe-to-toe with Buffalo. I think this will be one of the biggest blowouts of the day. So that's those two right there for me.
Yeah, Washington's the safest choice. I'm also going to say the Bucs. I think Philly goes in there and beats them as well.
As it should be, if they can get DeAndre Swift going, they have that triple tier threat to work with.
They have like 18 running backs, 2 elite receivers, and then Jalen Hurts.
And a partridge in a pear tree. Yeah, I know. We're not on Christmas Eve yet when Mike and I will be live for the Dallas Cowboys Miami game.
We're not even thinking about Christmas yet.
No, we have to get through that game before it can be Christmas.
All right, Mark. Who's your fantasy player of the day?
I'm gonna, the non-biased me is going to be Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson takes control of this game from the start with the loss of J.K. Dobbins. I think not only on the ground, but I think he and his BFF, Mark Andrews, will be in sync today like they were last week. I think it's going to be a Lamar Jackson fantasy day.
I'm going to go to a guy whose team we didn't really talk about. I'm going to go with DK Metcalf. I think Seattle is ripe for a big win over Carolina. There is no Bryce Young. It's going to be Andy Dalton. So I would expect to see how defense get some turnovers. Last week for Seattle, it was a Tyler Lockett game. I think this week it's a DK Metcalf game. And Seattle puts a pounding on Carolina. Sorry, Frank Reich. All right. That'll do it for this edition of the Sunday Sideline Report here on the Sports Insanity Network. We're with you every Sunday morning, previewing all the big games of the week here on the SIN YouTube page. Check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. You can follow us on the socials. On Twitter at SInsanityReal. And we're also on the Facebook, so go find us there. But for the old ops guy, I'm Mike Rifkin. Thank you for listening to Sunday Sideline Report. Sunday Sideline Report here on the Sports Insanity Network. Enjoy your Sunday of football, everybody. Okay.